Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about our two modulation sources. There's the modulation module over here, and then we have an additional LFO right over here. So modulation is kind of at the heart of Eurorack, and it makes sense that the Matriarch would have these modulation options. Some of them are hardwired. You can of course override that by patching and by adjusting settings. But I just kind of want to go through everything, and I will talk about one of the things that I think confuses a lot of beginners, and that's the sample and hold. But first, let's start with the easy stuff. So we have these LFOs like this one. This one kind of is separated from the other modulation module, and it's a pretty simple LFO. You can adjust the rate right here, and then it has a triangle out and a square wave out. You can also modulate the rate knob by plugging into this patch point. So if I took the wave out of this modulation source and plugged it into here, it would be similar to if I were to be just moving this knob. Let's slow it down. So you can see it picks up and goes faster, and then I'll slow down again. And as this light over here gets brighter, it starts to get faster again. As this light gets dimmer, it slows down. So that is that modulation source. Over here, our main modulation module, you can control the rate of the LFO right here. And you can control the waveform of the LFO right here. You have a simple sine wave, a sawtooth wave, a ramp wave, pulse wave, a staircase wave that goes up and down in a kind of triangle form. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a second. It's very similar to the sample and hold out. And then this is just a kind of random wave or random form. Now there are some hardwired modulations that are built in. We can see them right here. There's the cutoff amount, pulse width amount, and that's if you are in a pulse wave or a square wave for the waveform, and then pitch amount, and you can control the pitch modulation to affect just oscillators 1 and 3, all of them, or just oscillators 2 and 4. Now all of these three knobs are connected to our mod wheel, and that will be an attenuator for these. So if we turn them all the way up, even as we play something, you can hear it halfway through the LFO, which is a pulse wave, and it's going to be impacting the cutoff amount, will start to slowly take effect. And at full blast, it's going to completely cut out the sound and go back and forth. Let's hear the pitch amount. And then pulse width amount. So you can see if you turn this up into audio rate, it creates some really cool and interesting effects. It's just kind of fun. Rate in will modulate the rate knob, so plugging in an LFO. If we notice, it's the same as what I showed earlier from this oscillator. You can modulate the rate from a control signal. A signal to sync in, what that will do is actually reset the modulation every time a pulse or a trigger gets put into the sync in. So if I use the square wave out of this one, you'll notice that the sine LFO will restart rather than being a smooth rate. It'll keep restarting every time it receives a positive voltage. The noise out right here, this, you can take the actual sound noise out. It's just the same white noise that you would get from the mixer if I were to play this. That sound comes out of here, but you can use it as a modulation source as well to create some really funky stuff. And then finally, you can access this wave, the slow LFO, to modulate anything you want by coming out of the wave out. So let's talk a little bit about sample and hold. Now, I think that the term sample kind of confuses people a lot because we think of samples, we think of playing samples or little bits of audio. What happens with sample and hold circuits is as an LFO goes up, when it receives a trigger, it will stop at that moment and it will hold whatever value that is, even as the LFO continues to go up or down until it receives another trigger. So what happens is it creates stepped voltages. It's going to hold a value at the rate of the oscillator. It's actually sampling the noise, so it's going to be completely randomized. If I were to plug this into the pitch, you can hear it. Notice that every time it goes down, every time the cycle starts again, a new level is set, and it's totally randomized. Let's turn it up a little bit faster. And if you sync the modulation source with, say, the clock of the sequencer, it'll reset the LFO every time it plays a note, which will create a new randomized sequence. When we get into Eurorack 2, you can actually quantize this voice and make generative patches with completely randomized notes, but that stay within a chord or a scale. So that's coming in later videos, but I just wanted to explain how that sample and hold worked. Similarly, the staircase modulation waveform right here functions in kind of the same way, except for rather than sampling the noise out, it's sampling a triangle wave. Let's hear that. All right, that's how the modulation module works. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my patchwork on Patreon. You know, all that stuff. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next videos. We're going to go over the utilities, the attenuators, and the multipliers, and I'll also talk about the mixer section. And then from there, we get into the fun stuff where we're going to be patching things up and playing with Eurorack modules. So make sure you subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.